Australia makes it easier for New Zealanders to become citizens ahead of Anzac Day. The race is on to replace Alan Joyce at Qantas, and the boss of Google parent Alphabet receives an annual remuneration of around $340 million. It's Monday, the 24th of April, 2023. Welcome to Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you have an interview coming up with Warren Hogan, the economic advisor to Halo Technologies, and obviously best known for his role as chief economist at ANZ for a very long time.
Yes, we talk about the housing market and getting into the housing market and just how difficult it is, but we also talk about the Reserve Bank and what happened last week, and he turns out to be quite sympathetic to Phil Lowe and the central bankers more generally. Really interesting chat on housing and on the Reserve Bank.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's coming up a little bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the Australia-New Zealand relationship is absolutely critical, with both nations sharing a common interest across their economies, the transition to net zero, and, of course, tourism.
Meeting with his New Zealand counterpart in Brisbane yesterday, the Prime Minister said there was potential for further collaboration using the example of scientific research sharing on climate change. Mr Albanese said it was appropriate to announce changes that will make it easier for Kiwis to become Australian citizens ahead of Anzac Day, because that's when the two nations will be commemorating forebears who fought for democracy and freedom. Albanese will meet New Zealand Prime Minister Chris Hipkins again next month at King Charles's coronation and again at the NATO summit in July.
It hadn't occurred to me that the coronation might actually be a diplomatic event where the world leaders are having kind of meetings on the sidelines.
Absolutely. I would imagine that is kind of where all the fun will be, because I don't know where the US president's going. I don't know where the Chinese president's going, but we will get some serious players in terms of global affairs there. So it'll be great fun to watch.
Oh, that's fascinating. Suddenly the excitement is kind of amped up around the coronation for me. Sean, you mentioned the new rules in terms of citizenship. What are they?
Well, a new special category visa will be available, which will allow people to directly apply for citizenship without becoming a permanent resident first, provided they meet 4-year residence and other eligibility requirements. The changes will bring Australia's treatment of New Zealanders in line with New Zealand's treatment of Australians. Sounds fair enough. It paves the way for more than 350,000 Kiwis living in Australia to become eligible for citizenship from July 1. It also marks a reversal from laws brought in under the Howard government in 2001 that forced New Zealanders entering Australia onto a special visa category, allowing them to work but restricting them from entitlements including welfare benefits, access to student loans or housing.
Sean, there was a fair bit going on around Canberra, particularly given it's a 4-day weekend for many. Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles said he doesn't think conflict between China and Taiwan is inevitable. That's good news.
It is. Of course, Marles is the Defence Minister, and he was asked about it. He said Australia will continue to seek pathways for peace through diplomacy, but he also argued he had a sense of optimism despite the complex strategic environment faced in the region at the moment. The government will today release its long-awaited Defence Strategic Review that will give us further guidelines on how they're going to spend money and pay for that massive AUKUS deal.
I quite like having a defence minister who's an optimist. It's quite encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You want someone who's a bit upbeat, don't you?
He goes, you know what, there might be a way around this apart from conflict.
Yeah, I like that.
Finance Minister Katie Gallagher says Labor's upcoming budget will contain new taxes.
That's exactly right. I wonder what they are. The budget is expected to land on May 9, and Senator Gallagher said it will also update the cost of the legislated Stage 3 tax cuts. It'll be very interesting to see if they eventually go through. The budget might contain changes to multinational taxes and reforms to the petroleum resource rent tax, Senator Gallagher said. There's a big hint on what is actually going to happen. She also reiterated that the budget will contain a tax hike to high balance super accounts. Of course, that was announced by the Prime Minister back in March.
All right, so a pretty kind of busy weekend really for politics. How did the local market perform on Friday, Sean?
The S&P ASX 200 finished the day up 0.4% to 7,330 points. For the week, it was down around 30 points. The banks did poorly on Friday. Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and Westpac were all off more than 1%. The energy companies outperformed. Tough day for the iron ore miners. A build-up in port inventories hit investor sentiment, sending the price of ore down for the third straight day. It's now trading around 4-month lows of around $116 a tonne. At its peak 2 years ago, it was nearly twice that level. On the flip side, gold miners did well on Friday, with the price of the precious metal staying above $2,000 an ounce. St Barbara, Silver Lake Resources and Northern Star all outperformed.
And international markets?
Not a huge amount going on. Wall Street closed up slightly over the weekend. The big news this week is the reporting by the big tech companies. That's March quarter results. It includes Alphabet, Amazon and Microsoft. Otherwise, Michael, not a lot going on in commodity markets. Iron ore's lower, as I just mentioned. The Aussie dollar is trading back below 67 US cents.
Sean, you've got a bit of international travel coming up later in the year. Can we anticipate a significant increase in the amount of coverage of other currencies like the US dollar and certain kind of European
Euros,
currencies?
Perhaps, yes. Possibly. Although I have learnt my lesson. And so what I do now when I know I'm going away at some point in the future, I just start transferring currency. You're laughing at me for this. I'm going to be half right and half wrong. So if I sort of do it over a 6-month period,
it averages out.
Put a sum of money into euros, it averages out. Exactly right.
Oh, and that means that you may kind of complain about it less on approach to your trip.
I wouldn't say that.
We're not going to rule that out.
No.
Okay, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, one of the country's most high-profile CEO jobs is, of course, running Qantas. And Alan Joyce has been doing it for nearly 15 years now, can you believe it, through pandemics, through kind of plane groundings, airfare wars, union upheaval, plenty more. He's really had the full range of events while he has been in charge. But Joyce's tenure is coming to an end, and there are two prime internal candidates.
There are, but let me digress. I once interviewed Alan Joyce, I have interviewed him a few times, and I said, which part of Qantas do you like most? Do you like, the international part of the airline? Do you like the domestic, or do you like the frequent flyers, the loyalty points part of it? And he said, Sean, you have children, don't you? And I said, yep, I've got 4 kids. He said, these are my 3 children. I love each of them equally.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, well played, Alan Joyce.
Totally. He's
that
the
is
absolute
fantastic.
Diplomat, that man.
And after you've spent that long with it,
yeah,
you would know them all intimately, and you would just
totally.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to separate them, would you?
He's done a remarkable job. I mean, people love him and people loathe him, but he has had this role for a long time. His predecessor was a guy called Jeff Dixon, who had the role for a long time. And just that longevity of tenure of CEOs in these iconic companies, really, really good thing, I think. Now, Alan Joyce, obviously, he grounded the air fleet at one point there, which I suppose he'll always be remembered for. But anyway, look, I think most people would agree that he's done a pretty good job, certainly during the pandemic, though unions won't necessarily agree. Anyway.
Investors certainly seem to, because obviously the share price has recovered remarkably well.
It has, yeah, absolutely at the moment. So anyway, according to the Financial Review, the Chief Financial Officer, Vanessa Hudson, and Loyalty Chief, Olivia Worth, have been interviewed for the top job. A final decision is expected over the next 6 weeks or so, ahead of a strategy day that Qantas is holding towards the end of May. Ms. Hudson joined Qantas in 1994. In 2018, she became the Chief Commercial Officer before being promoted to Chief Financial Officer. Counting in her favour will be the management of the carrier's balance sheet during COVID-19. Obviously, the recent return to profitability is part of that. Ms. Worth joined the carrier in 2009. She's headed up the Chief Customer, Public Affairs and Loyalty divisions. She, like Ms. Hudson, doesn't have the operational experience of running an airline, but loyalty was Qantas's most profitable segment during the pandemic. It's going to be great to watch this little battle.
Yeah, and both of those candidates have been with the airline for a long time as well.
Yeah, it's quite possible they bring someone from outside as well, though I would imagine Alan Joyce would like to bring someone internal, but yeah, we'll wait and see on that.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Sean, the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission is calling on banks and their customers for feedback on competition and consumer issues affecting retail deposit products.
Collectively, Australians hold over $1.45 trillion in retail deposit accounts, and for many Australians, the interest earned on those accounts is an important source of income. ACCC Chairwoman Gina Cass-Gottlieb said that while banks have generally lifted variable rate home loans interest rates in line with the Reserve Bank's cash rate fluctuations, increases to the savings interest rates have often been smaller or conditional. Competition Watchdog is reviewing how banks have adjusted their rates for deposit accounts, including the use of introductory and other conditional interest rate offers.
Now, Sean, BHP has cut production targets for its Australian nickel and Chilean copper mines as output at its local iron ore and coking coal divisions head toward the lower end of target ranges.
That, along with lower iron ore prices, was enough to send the big Australian's share price down more than 4% on Friday. Iron ore is BHP's biggest revenue generator, but the 66.5 million tonnes shipped through Port Hedland in the 3 months to March was the division's weakest output in 2 years. The modest result puts BHP on track for a rare decline in annual iron ore exports in the year to June. BHP's Port Hedland export infrastructure has been hit by works to expand the capacity, as well as a voluntary halt to operations in February to mark the death of a port worker. Port Hedland has been unable to handle the record volumes coming out of BHP's mines in the Pilbara region of Western Australia.
This is an interesting one, Sean. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott has warned that enshrining an Indigenous advisory body in the Constitution is akin to creating a House of Lords.
He does have a sense of theatre, Tony Abbott.
He certainly does. I mean, he had it obviously when he was Prime Minister, and he had it as a minister and as a backbencher. Kind of, he knows how to get a headline.
He does. He explained himself by saying the advisory body would become an entity within the institutionalised power structure of the country to which only people with some Indigenous ancestry can be admitted. Hence the House of Lords comparison. The former Prime Minister has also told a parliamentary inquiry examining the wording of the Voice Amendment that anyone opposed to the plan is placed under suspicion of closet racism, according to media reports. Abbott has previously played a role opposing the 1999 push for a republic, and again, during the 2017 same-sex marriage vote. Mr Abbott will campaign for the no case this time around. He actually quoted Labor legend Bob Hawke saying in Australia there is no hierarchy of descent. There must be no privilege of origin. Mr Abbott has offered to give evidence to the cross-party parliamentary committee. In his submission, he said because there's so much uncertainty about the voice and because it's such a big change to the way we're governed, there's every likelihood it will fail.
And finally, Sean, before we move on to international news, Lynas Rare Earths has been granted a final appeal against a critical mineral processing ban levelled by Malaysian authorities on the Australian-listed company's flagship plant.
The ban is due to come into effect in June, and the supply of the strategically important rare earths is in jeopardy. Lynas is racing to build a replacement cracking and leaching plant at Kalgoorlie in Western Australia, but that may not be available until August. Lynas said its third quarter revenue dropped 30% as sales prices fell because of an oversupply. The oversupply of rare earths was a result of China's decision to boost its production by about 19% late last year.
All right, moving on to international news, and the Chilean president, Sean, will nationalise the country's lithium industry with potentially big ramifications for Australian suppliers.
Chile is the world's second largest producer of lithium. That's essential in electric vehicle batteries. The number one producer is Australia. The shock move in the country with the world's largest lithium reserves would in time transfer control of Chile's vast lithium operations from the big players there, the industry giants, to a separate state-owned company. The Chilean president said it's an opportunity for economic growth that's hard to beat in the short term. Maybe. I'm not sure what that does to the market, though.
Don't you think it's amazing that Australia is the world's largest producer of lithium?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, for a country, we are very good at digging stuff up.
We're extremely good at digging stuff up.
Oh, that's every day. I know we've talked about this before, but sometimes, just a fact kind of hits you. I'm like, wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, I suppose so. I don't really think about that. I mean, I suppose we're biggest in iron ore as well.
Yep.
We're kind of big in nickel, we're big in copper, and there's a bunch of them.
And we're big in gold, and kind of like we're just
coal.
Yep. I mean, look at us, aren't we? I
suppose that's just because we're huge.
Yeah, we are an overachieving mining nation.
Yeah. Maybe.
No, that's all right. You know what, Sean? I think I'm just channeling being the voice of the people from the from our weekend edition. I'm just feeling very patriotic today. How about this though? Well, this is a fantastic story to finish on. The chief executive officer of Alphabet, Sundar Pichai, his pay hit. This is just amazing just even saying this number. $226 million last year, making him one of the world's highest paid corporate leaders. That was just 1 year.
Yes. Well, it's about 340 million Aussie, and it was actually boosted by a triennial stock grant, i.e. every 3 years he gets this massive issue of stock. So that's why this time around he earned so much. So the stock award portion of his pay was about $218 million of the $226 million, according to a filing from the Google parent company. He received $6.3 million in compensation in 2021 when he didn't receive the grant, and then $226 million when he did. Not bad. The 50-year-old CEO has been navigating a much more competitive industry with artificial intelligence products such as ChatGPT from startup OpenAI threatening to undermine Google's dominance in search. Also, its share price fell quite sharply last year, though it's up about 20% this year.
Wow, that is a ripper of a payday. Sean, up next, we have the Fear and Greed Daily interview. Today you're speaking with Warren Hogan from Halo Technologies, really looking at the housing market.
Yeah, really all about the housing market, what's going on. He isn't confident that we've hit the bottom of the housing market. He still thinks there's a way to go. So it's well worth, if you're interested in property, interested in investing, interested in the housing market, it's well worth a listen.
And it's a big week for the economy as well, Sean. We've got our resident economist, Stephen Koukoulas, coming up with Fear and Greed the week ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, there's not a lot of economic data out, but the main piece of economic data that's out, which is Wednesday's CPI, is about as important a reading on the economy in terms of interest rates, at least, as we have had so far this year. If inflation is higher than forecast, everyone will expect the Reserve Bank to lift interest rates early next month. If it's lower, then there's a strong chance that they'll stay on pause.
Ooh, that sounds like a blockbuster.
Stay on pause.
Okay,
maybe.
Okay, well, pausing I never thought would actually kind of qualify as a blockbuster.
Not the greatest word, is it?
No. Okay. All right. They're both coming up. Well worth sticking around for. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Monday, the 24th of April, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And stay up to date on all the business news as well with Alexa and your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode. You can grab yours now at amazon.com.au. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.